Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This is Jeremiah 46, a message about Egypt. Just like with Isaiah, he says disaster is coming to Egypt. Spiritual disaster, profound disaster that is a fate far worse than the death of your flesh, which is just something that happens anyway. It's just death is a part of life, if you will. Now, it's important to note that just like with the prophecy against Judah and Israel, okay, that it has to do with who's doing the right thing. So in Egypt, right, you had Moses, you had Aaron, you had Joseph, you had people who in the story go to heaven, right? So the message against Egypt is a message against everyone who's outside of the Royal African Falcon Martial Order, because in Egypt, their word for God at one point was basically Ra, okay? But Horus is the son of God, right? As a son of Ra, Sa-Ra, a son of Ra. Now, what they're saying is that God's son is the top martial artist ever. He's the Royal African Falcon. And this is like, duh, everyone in the ancient world knew that beyond any doubt, so to speak, right? They knew that if you lived anywhere by Egypt, they knew these Africans were the most spiritual. This part, the Pharaoh was the martial art king of kings. Okay, you see it with David and Goliath, right? They're facing each other. You'll see it later on in the next couple chapters, after 47 through 49, that God curses Moab and the Philistines and so on by making their soldiers weak, among other things. That's a key part. It's said again and again. They're weaklings. They're cowards. How can you say that you're valiant warriors when you're not? So the message against Egypt is not against me. It's not against every black person that ever lived. It's not against anybody who's ever lived in Egypt. It's against those who are wicked, who maintain the worldly and profane cultures of Egypt. It's also against people who never stepped foot in Egypt, who practice Egyptian mysticism and magic and the occult, and so on and so forth. So this is the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning the nations, concerning Egypt. This is the message against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was defeated at, okay, this is the message. Okay, let's rewind here. This is the message against the army. Against what? Against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was defeated by Carchemish on the Euphrates River by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah. Prepare your shields, both large and small, and march out for battle. Harness the horses, mount the steeds, take your positions with helmets on, polish your spears, put on your armor. What do I see? They are terrified. They are retreating. Their warriors are defeated. They flee in haste without looking back, and there is terror on every side, declares the Lord. The swift cannot flee, nor the strong escape. In the north by the river Euphrates, they stumble and fall. Who is this that rises like the Nile, like rivers of surging waters? Egypt rises like the Nile, like rivers of surging waters. She says, I will rise and cover the earth. I will destroy cities and their people. Charge, you horses. Drive furiously, you charioteers. March on, you warriors, men of Cush and Put, who carry shields, men of Lydia, who draw the bow. But that day belongs to the Lord Almighty, a day of vengeance, for vengeance on his foes. The sword will devour till it's satisfied, till it has quenched its thirst with blood. For the Lord Almighty, will offer sacrifice in the land of the north by the river Euphrates. Go up to Gilead and get balm, virgin daughter Egypt, but you try many medicines in vain. There is no healing for you. The nations will hear of your shame. Your cries will fill the earth. One warrior will stumble over another. Both will fall down again. Now, they say America's the new Egypt in the occult, right? When you look up Crowley and so on and so forth, okay? But it's not that simple. Egypt, in a sense, is Babylon here, because all these systems merge in a global system. So Egypt, Moab, Philistine, Babylon, they're different components of the same system. They're yoked together, so they share the same fate. All outside the divine order, in their own way, are waging war. But they don't understand the principles of war because they're not true martial artists. They're not in the divine order. So though they're waging war as prostitutes, they're waging war as soldiers, police, as gang members, as corporate guys, as militias, as regular guys being part of the infrastructure of these various cultures and groups, as even hermits who think that their way is better. They're waging war against the principles of it being right to obey God through me. They're waging war against God, the Spirit, the principle, the source of the Spirit, the Father. Okay? But that day belongs to the Lord. It's a day of vengeance. A day, a lot of people are finding out these days when they're forced to be gender neutral, they're forced to be gayish, they're forced to, follow stupid rules, and they have no higher cause, so their life is wasted. The word waste, W-A-S-T-E, scrambled is W-A-S-E-T, right? Way, set, without the Y, right? Phoenicians, phonetics, sounds. Way set, waste, way set, lay waste. They chose the principles of evil, and they've wasted their lives. Then they meet their maker in disgrace. If they have offspring, they leave their offspring behind in disgrace. And Jeremiah said there'd be like dung on the ground. And excuse my French, but the word set is a play on words for S-H-E-E-T, which refers to the bedroom and the sheets of the clan and every other sheet application the occultists use, right? The flag is like a sheet, right? Sheet and shit. Dung. They're spiritually hung. They're done. They're dung. Dun, G, the G of masonry. G, the earth deity of Babylon and Rome. G, also known as Ki. They're done. So when you use energy instead of the Spirit of God, you're just moving your flesh-based energy, and your body is a sack of filth. People carry pounds of excrement in their body. Excuse my flesh, but I have to explain this. This is the message of the Lord spoke to Jeremiah, the prophet, about the coming of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, to attack Egypt. Announce this in Egypt and proclaim it in Migdol. Proclaim it also in Memphis and Tahpanhes. Take your positions and get ready, for the sword devours those around you. Why will your warriors be laid low? They cannot stand, for the Lord will push them down. Just like it said in the last chapter, or the chapter before, or earlier in this chapter, it kind of few me make it hard to remember, but it said something along the lines of, your land has been laid waste. Okay, so I think it was 44, chapter 44 said, your land has been laid waste. There's no inhabitants in there, even though they're there. So the warriors, they're soldiers, they're martial artists, they're anyone who thinks of themselves anything like that, anyone who fights for any cause, they're still here. But they're laid waste. They're useless. They're sacks of filth. They're just cowards. They're just punks. They're just namby-pamby pushovers. They're worms who betrayed their family, betrayed God. They're laid low. They don't stand for what's right, because the wisdom of their system is exposed. Their skirts are lifted. And they were always disgraced. Now it's obvious in Revelation. Reveal Alpha Shun and its implications. Anyway. They will stumble repeatedly. They will fall over each other. They will say, get up, let us go back to our lands. To our people in our native lands, away from the sword of the oppressor. They will exclaim, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is only a loud noise. He has missed his opportunity. As surely as I live, declares the Lord, whose name is the Lord Almighty. One will come who is like Tabor, among the mountains, like Carmel by the sea. Pack your belongings for exile. You who live in Egypt, for Memphis will be laid waste and lie in ruins without inhabitant. Egypt is a beautiful heifer, but a gadfly is coming against her from the north. The mercenaries in her ranks are like fattened calves. They too will turn and flee together. They will not stand their ground, for the day of disasters is coming upon them. The time for them to be punished. Notice it said like calves, right? And there's ball parallels, there's craftsman parallels, there's shape, what have you. Egypt will hiss like a fleeing serpent as the enemy advances in force. They will come against her with axes like men who cut down trees. They will chop down her forest, declares the Lord. Dense though it be, they are more numerous than locusts. Locusts in Revelation, right? Serpents, the devil. They cannot be counted. Daughter Egypt will be put to shame, given into the hands of the people of the north. The Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says, I'm about to bring punishment on Ammon, god of Thebes, on Pharaoh, on Egypt and her gods and her kings, and on those who rely on Pharaoh. I will give them into the hands of those who want to kill them, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and his officers. Later, however, Egypt will be inhabited as in times past, right? Where? In the spiritual realm on the new earth. Do not be afraid, Jacob, my servant. Do not be dismayed, Israel. I will surely save you out of a distant place, your descendants from the land of their exile. Jacob will again have peace and security, and no one will make him afraid. Okay, not those who rebel against God, not those who don't obey God through me. Same with Egypt. Do not be afraid, Jacob, my servant, for I am with you, declares the Lord. Though I completely destroy all the nations among which I scatter you, I will not completely destroy you. I will discipline you, but only in due measure. I will not let you go entirely unpunished. Now, who is Jacob in the story? It's the spirit of being in submission to God. Okay, that they eventually got through Nimrod and Abraham and so on and so forth, and then through Jacob, right? So it says, the spirit of those who are loyal to me will not go completely unpunished. Okay, but everyone who remains on this earth will go to waste, and those, well, I'm out of time.